All right, we will call this meeting to order. My name's Neil Dobler. I am here on behalf of Mayor Padilla, who was not able to make it tonight. We will start our proceedings by giving our attention to Councilwoman Nager, who will lead us in the invocation, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I would like to introduce Reverend Brad Wheeler, and you can come up to the stand. Reverend Brad Wheeler is the lead pastor at Topeka First United Methodist Church and is my pastor. Brad and his family moved to Topeka recently in July of 2022. Brad's wife, Melissa, is a fourth grade teacher at Whitson Elementary, which is also in District 6. Brad and Melissa have 4 children: Alex, who is a senior at Pittsburgh State, Sam, who is a freshman at KU, and Jackson and Emma, who both attend French Middle School here in Topeka. Before moving to Topeka, Brad served United Methodist churches in Lewisburg, Gardner, and his home church in Bonner Springs. Brad is passionate about connecting and serving in the church and in the community. He enjoys coaching as well as playing basketball and tennis with his kids and friends. Thank you so much, Pastor Wheeler.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for reading the bio. Thank you for allowing me to come tonight. So friends, tonight as we come together, I'm reminded of a psalm. Psalm 35 says, "In the evening, in the night, there is darkness and there are tears. But in the morning, we have the light and the joy of God." And so tonight, as we gather together and we begin this meeting, I'm reminded of many mission trips that I have gone on with youth over the years at many of my different churches. And every time we go on a mission trip, we talk about the need to serve one another. And as I come here tonight, I am in awe of all of you who are serving our community and leading our community in amazing ways. And so tonight, as we begin, let us pray. Our loving and gracious God, thank you tonight. Thank you for this day that you've made. Thank you for bringing us all together this evening. Lord, we thank you for the city of Topeka and the many ways in which you have blessed so many of us. God, tonight we just pray that your Holy Spirit would fall upon us. We pray tonight for your wisdom and for your guidance as decisions are made in the midst of many discussions. God, tonight I just pray that your Holy Spirit and your peace would fall upon each of us. Your peace which transcends all understanding. God, we just thank you so very much. Through Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Mayor Padilla, Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Aquila,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Kale,
Here.
Nager,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Hofer. Okay, we have 8 present.
Thank you. Item 2, presentations. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to turn it over to the finance team for this.
Good evening. I am Leah Bowling, the Director of the Contracts and Procurement Division with the City of Topeka. I am here this evening to provide a presentation on the 2023 annual goal for minority, women, and disadvantaged business enterprise utilization. So for the presentation agenda this evening, we'll first do a code overview. We'll review and recap the 2022 goal. We'll look at the 2023 goal and recommended actions for obtaining that goal. First off, to give a brief overview and reminder, the Program Review Committee is outlined under Topeka Municipal Code, Chapter 3.30.460, Subsection B, Item 3, and that calls for a committee comprised of city staff responsible for creating and reporting on goals for the utilization and participation of minority, women, and disadvantaged business enterprises, otherwise known as MWDBE. Responsibilities of the committee include presenting annual goals to the city manager for the utilization of MWDBE businesses, which is what brings me here this evening. Another responsibility is reviewing and analyzing on a quarterly basis our ability to meet and achieve those utilization goals. And third is report to the governing body on a quarterly basis through the city manager the utilization of MWDBE businesses. These are the numbers and information that are provided in the quarterly financial report. To recap, the 2022 goal that was set was 41%. In 2022, the city issued a total of 214 bids to the public. Of those 214, the city received diverse vendor participation on 73 of those bids. From the 73 bids, the city awarded 30 to diverse vendors, providing 41.095% utilization for 2022. 2023 goal, the committee recommends 38.5% MWDBE utilization. The Program Review Committee created this goal in consideration of utilization over the previous years, the current market environment and labor shortages, and current forecasting trends in public procurement that we're seeing both states surrounding our area as well as national forecasting trends. To achieve the 2023 goal, some of the steps and activities we are going to do include hosting vendor workshops for businesses to come to the city and receive on-site guidance for using our website and the ePro bidding system. We actually hosted our first one on February 18th, and we had several new businesses attend and participate in that with laptops that we provided in the room here. Item number 2, we will work with the DEI director on identifying community and small diverse business workshops that the city can contribute to and participate in. We'll also work with the DEI director on identifying dates and times for hosting bilingual workshops around the city to engage with those vendors for registering and submitting bid responses. Item 3, the committee will work with the GTP to identify dates, times, and locations for hosting workshops on how to do business with the city. This was, we began this process back in 2019, and it's been successful as part of our endeavor with this program. And item 4, last but not least, we will host a vendor fair in partnership with several organizations for contractors, vendors, and businesses to receive on-site guidance from city staff on how to do business with the city. Our state chapter, the Kansas Association of Public Procurement Professionals, otherwise known as CAP, is hosting a reverse vendor fair here in Topeka, October 12th. So that's a statewide event that the city is heavily involved in planning and helping to host. So we continue to work on that event to get that up and going. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the body? Councilwoman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So, Leah, thank you for all that y'all are doing with this. So we can confirm, just to make sure I heard you right, the city is going out into the community to do some of these workshops?
Correct. Kathleen Burrows is actually our liaison officer for the Program Review Committee, and she's working directly with the DEI director and other agencies already. They are in the process of planning things.
Okay, and so especially for the Spanish-speaking businesses, and I'm sure DEI director knows this, that keeping in mind flexible hours, dates, and times because of work schedules of these small business owners that are in the Spanish-speaking community?
Absolutely, and it is part of our process will be to host various days, so Saturdays and during the week, during work, after work, different hours to accommodate that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else? Councilman Duncan?
I guess in line with that, and maybe we already have this and I don't know it, as we do those presentations, have we thought about doing some sort of permanent thing we can put on our website that kind of walks through this, that's sort of a version of those workshops for the people who can't make it or didn't know about it or call on a Monday and you say, sure, you can watch this on a Tuesday? I mean, have we thought about that or looked into doing anything we can just always have available online?
Yes, absolutely. So right now we have both English and Spanish versions of step-by-step how-to guides with screenshots, all in Spanish, all in English. So that's one resource. Another resource we are currently working on is the English version is out there for a step-by-step tutorial to watch the clicks on the screen. We're going to be doing that in Spanish. That is something we're currently working on. And then the Program Review Committee documents, Spanish and English versions are currently out on our website.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Turn my mic on. All right, item number 3, the clerk will read.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of December 31, 2022 to January 27, 2023, and enumerating said expenditures therein. B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, allowing and approving city expenditures for the period of January 28 to February 24, 2023, and enumerating said expenditures therein. C is approval of a Public Works engineering contract between the City of Topeka and Alfred Benish in the amount of $150,893 for the purpose of providing engineering services to include data collection, typographic mapping, and the plans and specifications for construction bid letting. D are minutes of the regular meeting of March 14, 2023, and there are no applications.
Thank you. You've heard the consent agenda. Would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Moved by Councilman Kell. Second by Councilman Emerson. The clerk will take the roll.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acula,
Yes.
Ortiz,
yes,
Emerson,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4, action items. Clerk will read.
4 is acceptance of land dedications in the final plat for Mission Ridge Subdivision Number 2, located on the southwest corner of Southwest 41st Street and Southwest Wanamaker Road.
Thank you. Mr. Warner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Real quickly on this one, so this plat encompasses about 22 acres. It's a replat of a 2004 plat. It's 48 lots in total. It's related to the zoning case that follows this. One thing to note, it removes some green space easements that were present on that previous plat that had to do with buffering the non-residential uses from the residential uses. But it is keeping a 40-foot drainage detention easements on the plat. The Planning Commission approved the preliminary and final plats by a vote of 7-0 at their meeting at February 20th. Before the plat can be recorded, the governing body must take action to accept the dedications of land for the public streets, rights-of-way, and easements. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Warner? No questions. I would entertain a motion. Councilwoman Nager moves to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Wade, no. Councilwoman Ortiz seconds. Clerk will take the roll.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller, Valdivia Acula,
Yes.
Ortiz,
yes,
Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
and Nager.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item 4B, the clerk will read.
B is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on property located at the southwest corner of Southwest Wanamaker Road and Southwest 41st Street from PUD planned unit development with an M1 two-family dwelling district use group and a PUD with an O&I office office and institutional district, and C2 commercial district use groups to M1 two-family dwelling district to allow for residential duplex build-out.
Thank you. City Manager?
This is the Dan Warner show tonight, so we've got him up for the next two.
Deputy Mayor, Council, just a few points to make about this. The existing zoning that's on the property currently allows duplexes on the south and west property line. What this zoning is doing, at least part of this zoning is essentially a down zoning. That is less overall intensity for the portions of the property that are O&I and C2. So that's all going to M1. It's all going to be duplexes now. The housing study that was approved, a couple years ago, noted that we are lacking missing middle type housing in the city. So that's generally duplex, triplex, quads, anything from 2 units or 20 units and fewer. So this fills one of those needs, and it's important that we have that missing middle type development all over the city. One thing about stormwater, this project has to be built to current city standards. The previous drainage report that was approved with the previous plat was also approved as acceptable with this plat. So that is all I have.
All right. You've heard the presentation. Any questions from the body? Seeing none, this action does require that ex parte, or parte for that matter, communication be noted. So I'm going to read the paragraph here as quickly as possible. Prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body who is engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in the communication, they were able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report and its attachments, the public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information related to the matter. Does any member want to disclose ex parte communication? Councilman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I believe, and I may be getting these confused, but I believe this was the one we all received an email on asking about drainage, if I'm not mistaken. And I know Mr. Warner quickly, I think, answered that. And he said it tonight. So I don't know if really that's ex parte or not on this, but in case it is, I'm disclosing it. And nevertheless, I can make an impartial decision based on the record. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. I had, this is in my district, I had at least 2 phone calls questioning the payment of taxes in arrears and drainage issues. Really no opposition, just questions, and obviously I'll be able to make an unbiased vote here. So if there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Motion for approval by Councilman Emerson. Is there a second? All those in favor, or sorry, City Clerk?
Council
Russian.
members Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdiviacla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
yes,
Emerson,
Yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4C, the clerk will read.
C is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, amending the district map referred to and made a part of the zoning ordinances by Section 1850-050 of the Topeka Municipal Code by providing for certain changes in zoning on properties located at the northeast corner of Southwest Huntoon Street and Southwest Jewish Road from PUD planned unit development with R1 and R3 single-family dwelling districts and R3 single-family dwelling district to RR1 rural residential district.
Mr. Warner,
Deputy
good to see you
Mayor,
again.
Council, thank you. I realize this one might be a little counterintuitive, so I will try my best to explain what's happening here. So the property has remained undeveloped with a home on it for quite some time. Even after it was rezoned in 2006 to the current what is a relatively dense single-family development scheme. It continued to be vacant, or not vacant, undeveloped with a home, just as it is today. Based on that, it doesn't appear there was much of a market for that rezoning at the time, and this owner certainly doesn't intend to execute that zoning. So what we have now is one owner that's going to own those 20 acres, wants to live there and have agricultural uses on the property. The area that this property is located in is slowly urbanizing. We've got land north of this that's zoned RR1 and in the county. We've got land south of it zoned RR1. We've got land west of it zoned RR1. There's some urban development to the east, but again, this area is slowly urbanizing. What this zoning does is essentially put this 20 acres back into a holding pattern for future development. If this owner wants to rezone in the future to some urban density, we've got a comp plan that supports that. We've got other things that would likely support it. But really, until that time, either this owner or another owner wants to do that, it will stay in this configuration and be 20 acres that's undeveloped. A couple other points. Sewer would need to be extended to this project to make it viable anyway, and Huntoon is still a rural 2-lane road, which likely would impact the urbanization of this property as well. So with that, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Any questions, Councilman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Warner, on the map, it shows like some streets in there right now, but those are not actually in there. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is a platted streets, and they intend to, after the zoning is approved, submit a plat to vacate those streets.
Okay, thank you. And there are also there's no specials or anything else on this property right now, correct?
I'm not positive about that. I'm not exactly sure. That has not come up in the process.
I guess I'm sorry, maybe a better question would be any active benefit districts with the city on this?
I don't think so. They have not constructed any improvements in that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Kell?
Have they expressed, when you said agricultural use, have they expressed what type of agricultural use that they're looking at?
I think, some just your standard flowers, vegetables type thing, the small animals, whatever is permitted in, whatever other codes that the city has. But not like a full-on operation of, corn and that sort of thing. It's more of I don't even want to characterize. It's not that level of agriculture, corn and beans and that sort of thing.
Mr. Warner, what's a standard flower, by the way? Is that?
I'm not sure.
Just curious. I hadn't heard that term. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just because it is counterintuitive, like you say, I mean, why would somebody be spending the money to roll back the zoning if it was discussed?
I think that's a question for the property owner. They want to use the property as a house and the ag uses. They have no interest in those platted
Stop the change.
streets and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Ortiz? No. I do have one question, City Manager, perhaps for the Public Works Director. As I recall, that portion of Huntoon was in the CIP. It might have been removed, but at one point, Huntoon from somewhere at the top of the hill on over to Urish was in the CIP, and this really is taking a chunk of potential development out of the picture for that area. Is there still an intent to have that street in the CIP?
I did not bring my CIP with me. I will research and provide you with an email with the status of that project and where it is in the CIP.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, one more question. Mr. Duncan, it's yours.
All right, this may be a weird question. We'll just preface right there. All right, if you look at the map, do they own all the property to Kings Row?
No, they own to what's hatched.
So is that little square a building?
As a house.
Is that their house?
No.
Okay, so they don't own that part, which is why it's not included.
Correct.
Okay, I was just making sure because I thought it was weird if they weren't including the house. Okay, just want to. All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Seeing none, this does require ex parte communication, so I will read. Prior to proceeding with the vote, each member of the governing body who is engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in the light of having engaged in the communication, they were able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based only upon the evidence provided on the record. The record includes the Planning Commission minutes, the staff report and its attachments, the public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information related to the matter. I got to say, that's two of the longest sentences I've ever seen.
Mic check, please, mic check.
Is there a second, Councilwoman Ortiz? Second.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, clerk will take the roll.
Okay, council members Hiller. Yes. Valdivia Akala.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Emerson.
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Yes.
And Duncan.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries. D is a resolution introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade, temporarily suspending governing body rule 2.11 for the March 28, 2023 strategic planning special meeting.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next week, we actually move into a special session to discuss strategic planning. The first hour and a half of that will be largely in small group settings. That makes it very difficult from an audiovisual aspect. And so we're requesting permission to suspend the rules and not go live on TV4, Zoom, and Facebook for that first hour and a half. Otherwise, we're just going to be looking at blank air.
Great. Any questions for the City Manager? Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you. Okay, because we're meeting in groups and it would be hard to pan.
Not just pan, but you won't be able to hear because we'll be in small group settings, and so there's no way to pick up the audio in those group settings. When the strategic plan itself is presented, and we would anticipate that starting at about 7:15, we will be in a traditional setting with full audio, full video, so that that plan can be discussed in open session.
Okay, thank you.
And City Manager, this is an open meeting, so the press will be invited. Anybody that
Always
wants to
welcome.
come and hang out certainly can.
Always welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Motion's been made for approval. Is there a second?
Sylvia.
Councilwoman Ortiz seconds. The clerk will take the roll.
Council members Valdivia Akala.
Yes.
Ortiz.
Yes.
Emerson.
Yes.
Kale.
Yes.
Nager.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler.
Yes.
Councilmember Duncan.
Yes.
And Hiller.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4E, the clerk will read.
E is a resolution introduced by the Public Infrastructure Committee comprised of council members Tony Emerson, Neil Dobler, and Michelle Hofer, amending the 2023 to 2032 CIP and the 2023 to 2025 CIB, increasing the project budget for project number 701048, Phase 1, the Polk Quincy Utility Relocation.
Thank you. City Manager?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a request to increase authorized funding for utility moves tied to the Polk Quincy Viaduct construction. This was presented to Public Works and Infrastructure a couple weeks ago.
Thank you. I would ask the chair of the Infrastructure Committee for a quick report. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, we met, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago on this request. You know, a lot of this is just due to inflation right now that we're seeing. A couple of us did express, I think this timeline is extremely short to do this amount of work. And I think we need to be prepared that viaduct job's going to get moved back a year or something, because I don't see this. But however, what we're talking about here is this funding, and I support that. I think it's needed.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions, comments? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have concerns. They haven't changed much from before, except here we go again. If I read the minutes correctly, when the Public Works Infrastructure Committee was introduced this item, the figure that was quoted to the committee was $3.87 million. In only 2 weeks, it's now $4.59 million. So I'm really concerned about I understand the inflation was discussed and we've heard that otherwise, but to have it go up, whatever that is, 20% again in 2 weeks concerns me greatly, and just felt like I needed to get that on the table. But fundamentally, my concern is, and I asked only briefly the city manager whether we had talked to the state about this. The Polk Quincy Viaduct overall is an unfunded federal mandate to the city. And so to even have to pay $20 million for it, and I know negotiation was done about the utilities on that, but for us to have to pay anything is, to me, really burdensome. 100% of that is over our debt limit and so on, and then to be asked to add another $5 million to it, which puts us at $700,000 over that, apparently the $20 million already, is just an incredible burden to this city and the citizens here. And so with the state having now refilled the bank of KDOT and so on, because this is, it's not anything we asked for, it's not anything that had an intent to improve our economic well-being and more tax flow to pay for it, which is what bonding is for. I'm just troubled, and I don't know if there's any appetite in my colleagues. I've not lobbied anybody to add to this motion, whatever should be a request to have the leadership staff go to the state and maybe to our state legislative delegation and see what we can do to get some help on this big bill. So.
Thank you, Councilwoman. City Manager.
Councilman, we have had conversations with the state. We are at a point to where we are maxed out on our ability to get more. And the differences between the two numbers has to do with cost of issuance. What we've determined is that because these are utility moves, they become part of the greater infrastructure, and therefore that puts us under different bonding considerations. We're having to issue revenue bonds instead of GO bonds. That cost of issuance does raise the number, and that's why there's a difference.
Thank you for that explanation. If I can add a comment?
Please do.
I guess in terms of talking to the state, I realize that they work hard to divvy up the projects, the transportation projects all around the state. And maybe if Polk Quincy is being considered a Topeka project, it would look like we're getting more than our fair share. But as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be held against our part of the ledger, both for the match or for getting funds for other projects for that matter, because it's bigger than that. It's an interstate that somebody else built with a tight turn, a short on-ramp, and no shoulders. And now we're being asked to participate in fixing it. And of course we want it fixed. It's been promoted recently as the fact that the city was going after this. And of course we did, because we've been under orders to do this for 15, 20 years and can't do anything else until it gets done. But it was not generated from the city. And it seems like there ought to be some way for us to get the state or somebody to help with this cost.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other? Councilman Duncan?
It'd be nice to go to the state. I think we all know that's not going to happen. They're putting in over $300 million on this deal, and their cost going to eat any cost increases as they go up over the next 3 years, sadly. So yes, I wish the state would. We all want to see this project done for various reasons. We see the benefits of it. I mean, we've boxed ourselves into a corner in some instance, in the sense that we've committed, we've made promises to the state, we put up the money, and at this point, we're not going to cancel a $300+ million project, even though this sounds silly, over 7, 9, 10 million more dollars. It's still, I guess, from that perspective, a good investment. I do have a question here in a minute, but I guess I'm just going to sound bitter for like 30 seconds. I sat here several times and said, this project will cost us more than $20 million. And I was told in public meetings, no, we promise it's going to stay at $20 million. I'm not a genius. I'm not a soothsayer. I don't have any special powers. But I kind of knew from day one this doesn't surprise me at all. I remember those conversations vividly. So here we are. So I will vote for this tonight begrudgingly, because I'm not a fool who's going to give up a $300+ million project over 7, 8 million more dollars. But yes, along with Councilwoman Hiller, it's a little frustrating. My question is, as we build this thing, there will be these spaces underneath that we've previously discussed. And I know that at one point there was some planning, some by the partnership, some by us, about what we're going to do with those. And none of that's been settled. I recognize that. However, as we relocate these utilities, have we spent any time making sure that we're running utilities to those spaces so that when we do decide after it's all built, gee, it would have been nice to build a fountain, a bathroom, there. Oh, well, crap, we should have run water or we should have run electricity. I mean, have we had any of that thought process, or can we, as we look forward, as to making sure we have simple connections to those areas with utilities? If we're going to spend the money, let's do it right?
Ms. Davis.
Thank you. I can tell you that we have looked at that. We're not removing too many of the service lines, but because we don't know what is being planned and exactly where that will go, we can't guarantee that we're not going to have to dig something new up. But there's a lot of available service lines still in the area to help connect to.
Okay, yeah, that's all I want to make sure is at least we're not then, have to do a mile or half mile down the road
Absolutely.
And tearing up streets again since we know we want to do something under some of those. Great, thank you very much.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion. Thank you, Councilwoman Nager. Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Behind you. Above you.
Councilwoman,
Wherever.
all around me. Councilwoman Ortiz, seconds. The clerk will take the roll.
Councilmembers Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Begrudgingly, as my colleague would say it, yes.
and Valdivia Aquila.
No.
We have 7 yes, with Valdivia Aquila voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 4F, the clerk will read.
F is a resolution introduced by City Manager Stephen Wade declaring the necessity to repair, alter, reconstruct, enlarge, or improve the city's water pollution, and/or stormwater utility system through improvement projects authorized by resolution and providing notice of intention, authorizing the issuance of revenue bonds in the manner required by KSA 10-1201 at SEEK.
Thank you. City Manager.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is the second half of the Polk Quincy discussion. This is a request for authorization to issue those revenue bonds tied to it in an amount not to exceed $27,090,560.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions from the body? Seeing none, yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, City Manager, I just wanted to ask, we're doing revenue bonds to fund this, but I believe revenue bonds won't be, or utility fees are not going to be used to pay this, correct?
That is part of our proposal, tied back to our water rate discussion, is that the utility fund will be held harmless for this expansion. It'll be funded through general fund,
Okay.
but we're required to issue as utility bonds. Technically, the utility fund will pay for it, but we're proposing to be reimbursed through the general fund.
Okay, thank you. So this will have no effect on our utility rates?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion or a resolution.
Move to approve.
Councilman Kell moves to approve. Is there a second? Councilman Emerson, the clerk will take the roll.
Councilmembers Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Reluctant, yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
No.
and Ortiz.
Yes.
We have 7 yes, with Valdivia Aquila voting no. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we're through our action items in what I'm fairly sure is record time. We'll move on to item number 5. The clerk will read.
A is discussion concerning potential utility rate changes for infrastructure maintenance and investment.
City Manager, it's all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This topic seems to be ongoing. We are hopefully wrapping up our discussions, coming closer to a close. There were a couple questions posed last week that I specifically wanted to address. Deputy Mayor, you challenged us with finding a way to, in essence, rebate pilot funds, pilot fees, back over to utilities. We have studied, and we can support $2 million on an annual basis, rebating from pilot fees back to utilities. That rebate, in essence, covers the debt service on the $27 million that we just authorized intent to pursue. That does hold utilities harmless. I think you asked for $2.5 million. That gets to a point to where we're uncomfortably tight. But we do believe we can support $2 million from the general fund. The second challenge was to reduce stormwater rates. We did spend a lot of time looking at that. We looked at it in a couple different ways. We looked at it overall. We also looked at it, was there a way to where we could do residential only and not commercial? As it is, when we run the pro forma for 2024 and 25, we are already budgeting to operate at a loss. The way we cover that loss is through spending down reserves. So to increase that deficit, we get to a point to where we cannot support it. So it is not our recommendation to reduce those stormwater rates.
All right, I appreciate that consideration. At this point, I think we're open for questions, or is there a presentation?
We would, if Deputy Mayor, if you would, we would like to talk a little bit about the stormwater side.
Please
and
do.
So have both Director Davis and Deputy Director Malott available.
Okay, so the city manager asked me to highlight a couple of key components to the argument that we need to continue our proposal to increase stormwater rates. We have done so in an effort to continue to address deferred maintenance, particularly for our levees and stormwater conveyance systems. We have some big projects in the works. Currently, we have a large rehab replacement project for failing infrastructure under Fairlawn. That's one example. We have a project to upgrade electrical components at our Quincy stormwater pump station. At this point in time, that pump station is almost useless because of the needed upgrades after some vandalism that has occurred, and we have historically not had money set aside for pump station rehab on the stormwater side of things. We also have some planned repairs for Soldier Creek levees. in conjunction with the North Topeka Drainage District project to upgrade those. We are proposing to partner, cost share with them to make these improvements. Currently, that North Topeka and Soldier Creek levee system protects over 6,000 residents, 3,000 buildings, to the tune of about $1.65 billion in property values. And the project in total is anticipated to be $4 million. We currently have $750,000 available, and that's out of our $2 million match. So those are some of those big ticket items that put us in the need for some additional funding to the program.
Thank you for that, City Manager.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor, I just would like to stress, these are repairs. We are not upgrading the system. These are repairs to deficits that we already have.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions? I knew you were going to have a question. I anticipated it.
Well, no, I wanted to ask for first a clarification. You said $2 million. Did you say from the general fund, or did you mean reserves?
Through general fund operating.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about the reserves last week. Did we look at using any of those additional dollars?
We can authorize the usage of general fund reserve for one-time projects.
I'm talking about utility reserves.
Okay. Oh, okay. Maybe I'm not understanding. So yes, we are spending down utility reserves in an effort to keep rates down.
Okay.
So we are getting to a point to where we are maintaining our covenant coverage, and that's about it.
I did have a question last week. We mentioned $101 million was the amount we had. 108 was our expenses. Revenue was 100. So you said we made up that difference through reserves.
That's what we're spending down, yes, sir.
And that was from last year, or that's projected this year?
That is 2024.
So in 2024, we expect that reserve number of whatever it was, 28 million or something, I can't remember, to go down by $7 million.
Okay, so the $28 million is on the general fund side. The money that's being spent down in that $7 million gap is all coming from utilities.
Right, so what is our utility reserves?
Pulling it up.
I always think I know what you're going to ask.
And maybe it was
I
at
have to go digging for
28%
it.
last year. I'm just trying to figure out where that $7 million's coming from.
So I think we're getting, we've been talking about both general fund reserves as well as utilities. And I think that's where we're getting crossed. The 28% is about the level of reserves we have on the general fund side, which equates to about $7 million above our stated threshold, our requirements. And so we've had conversations with the governing body at different point in times about the ability to utilize that $7 million for a project.
Right.
We can't use it for operating, but we could use it for a separate project. What we're proposing here as part of utilities, total separate fund, is what reserves we have over our required bond covenant level, spending that down to that level.
For the general fund?
On utility side.
Okay, because for this conversation, I don't care about the general fund.
We're talking strictly utilities,
okay,
sir.
So that's my question, is what percentage we're at in utilities, and if we're going to spend $7 million, what that looks like.
I don't have the percentage right in front of me. Utilities, based on the rate covenants, typically looks more at days cash as opposed to a straight percentage of reserve. What that's looking like is spending the utilities cash down to 2024 is about 220 days cash, down to 207 in 2026.
207 days?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And rate covenants, I believe it's 180 or 185 is the minimum required.
So how much is that? I guess. I didn't think this was, no offense, I didn't think this was a hard question.
so,
How much money is in our utility reserves?
So 2024 anticipated end of year end balance, not necessarily reserve, but balance would be 35 million.
Okay. And that's the 270, gets us down to two, but after this 2024, we expect that to be down, but 202 or whatever it is. Okay, thank you.
Sounds like a lot, but our debt at this point is what?
$300 million.
Yeah. So, not even 10% of our debt at that
No,
point.
sir.
All right, Councilwoman Ortiz, did you have a question?
I did, but it was answered through that discussion. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any other questions for the city manager or the rest of the team? Councilwoman Heller.
Thank you. We got a list of possible changes on the 27th of February, and now we have a new draft in front of us. Maybe people aren't ready today, but it would be good to reconcile that, I guess, for us to know exactly where we are. Could you, one of the things that I asked a question about was the ready to serve charge, and I see that now in this new version, which we just got, it's sort of combined with the base rate. Could you cover that, someone?
Yep. We essentially were proposing changing the base rate to a readiness to serve charge. It's, let me pull this up here really quickly. The cost of billing, collection, customer service, maintaining and operating our meter infrastructure, the AMI system, providing public fire protection, hydrants, et cetera. All of that has traditionally been captured through that base charge. That base charge is currently only billed to active customers. So we are proposing transitioning to a readiness to serve charge, which would allow us to capture those costs because that service is always there. That does mean capturing the service and overhead from every property, regardless of whether or not they're actively using the service. It's a very common practice. We have looked around locally, but nationally, it's a very common practice. We know that, Steve and I had this conversation, I'm sorry, the city manager and I had this conversation earlier today. So you might have to remind me which one, but Kansas City charges both water readiness to serve charge and wastewater readiness to serve charge, and Wichita does the readiness to serve for water, but not for wastewater.
So, and I'll add into that, if I could, current municipal code actually mandates that we charge this. So the readiness to serve on both the clean water side and the wastewater side, by code, we're supposed to be charging base rates on. We got away from that for whatever reason, and so this is actually following up on current code.
So if you could explain that again. These are only properties that are tied into the water service, correct? Not vacant properties, not anything else.
If there's a meter on the property tied into the system, they would receive a readiness to serve charge. If you have a vacant lot without a meter on it, or if you have a system that's been disconnected, physically disconnected, they would not receive a charge.
How about the stormwater charge? They still get a charge if there's a structure on the property, regardless of whether it's hooked up to the water main or not. Do they get a charge?
We are currently charging on the commercial side, but not on the residential side. One of the reasons for that is if you look at that amount, which is roughly $621, I think, for in 2023. When you look at the cost of billing and collection on it, there's very little gain by doing that. And so we have not been chasing that on the residential side.
Okay. I do have a question that I believe for the last 3 or 4 weeks we've talked about 5/8 and 3/4 inch meters. Those don't seem to show up on the draft ordinance. unless I'm just totally overlooking it.
I think the way it's listed currently on the draft ordinance, Deputy Mayor, is it says below 1 inch. And so that below 1 inch, in essence, covers the 5/8 inch meters. I think we have a few circumstances to where there's, 3/4 inch? But it's a very small number.
But the rates are, we're still considering rates that are less for 5/8 inch?
Yes, sir, we are. So there is a rate reduction on, there's less of an increase on 5/8 inch than there is on 1 inch.
I guess I'd ask the city attorney, if we're doing different rates for 5/8 inch meters, shouldn't they show up in the rate schedule?
I'm going to have to look at this for 1 second while you guys talk, and then
Okay,
I will try to
great.
get you an answer.
If you note, respectfully, there's a one, in the previous or the existing ordinance, it states 1 inch and below. This edit calls out striking that below to the 1 inch, so that will be our 1 inch charge, and then the below 1 inch is that 3/4.
That's it.
Yeah.
That makes total sense now. I didn't read that correctly. So anything below 1 inch, whether it's 3/4, 5/8, that makes perfect sense. Thank you very much. City attorney, you can quit looking now. Great. Councilwoman Hiller?
Thank you. If I could follow up on that, my question about the readiness to serve charge, and yours really, if you're planning to then charge in Topeka both if I read this, and I just had a quick chance to look through it, both the water and the stormwater readiness to serve charge, that they were added together to give us the number that you thought would, when we talked about it before?
There's no readiness on storm. It's on
I'm sorry,
water,
I meant wastewater. Water and wastewater, yes, both?
Correct,
Is that
yes,
what I'm
both.
reading? Okay, so if we are charging both of those, to his question, is there any reason not to charge the stormwater after all, which is in our ordinance?
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
The stormwater does kick in. So by doing the readiness to serve charge, that puts us at a point to where billing it makes sense.
Okay,
So the stormwater that may not be currently being paid does kick in because of the billing number.
okay, just wanted to clarify that one all the way through.
Yeah, it opens up, it allows us that avenue to start doing that.
Because I get it not being cost effective. I was concerned that even 23 a month wasn't cost effective. But I'm also worried about whether people, trying to just figure out the circumstances from the people up about, usually if you turn off your water, the idea is you're not going to have to pay a bill. If a house is in a short-term turnover or an apartment, generally people don't shut the water off, or they just do it in terms of changing who's got the bill. But there are some people who then would turn the water off, drain the lines, and so on to save money, and because a property is going to be vacant for a while. So what we're saying here is that those folks, how many of those folks are we expecting to just leave the water on after all, or that they really will pay?
So we currently have 2,950 customers that are connected to the system that are not paying anything.
That worries me. That's why I keep asking that question about whether they will pay or whether we'll just have a bureaucratic nightmare.
Well, we will be in a situation, once or twice a year we do come back to council asking for unpaid debt to be applied to property taxes. And that is the assessment procedure that we will be going through.
Okay, so not a lot on, I still worry about people coming back and taking a lot of customer service time, but I don't know the experience of other cities on that.
I might add that if somebody was anticipating a long shut-off, they would still have the option to remove their meter.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. And one last piece to this, the proposed contribution for some sort of low-income assistance is not mentioned in this ordinance. So I don't know how you were planning to handle it, but would there be an anticipation? We know, there are people who know how many of those the service that's off is low-income people who are still living in that house and have figured out how to get water otherwise. And so and that's being taken care of by staff on a case-by-case basis so as not to cause harm. I get that. So my question would be whether, oddball as it would be, whether the low-income aid money might be available to help people. They're not going to be able to pay that if they can't pay for water.
What's being proposed here is a contribution of $500,000
Right.
to rate assistance. And so those are operational funds. And so it's not in the ordinance because that will have to be approved by the council on an annual basis as part of the operational budget.
Okay.
And so that's why you're not seeing it here specific. But that is our intention, is to request authorization to make that contribution.
And if I can draw you out on a question I asked earlier, at this point there's been a lot of back and forth about how to do that and how to make it work. So is that still a work in progress, or have you pretty well settled?
No, it's very much a work in progress.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Kell?
Okay, on those roughly 3,000 you mentioned, how many of those are those all residential, or is that a combination of residential and commercial?
Based on the size of the meters, I would say some of them are commercial. I would wager that the majority of them are residential.
My only fear is like we get into a situation where if we're promoting almost, if you don't want this get your meter taken out, we may have some commercial properties that are have a fire suppression system that now where the property owner is encouraged to yank that out, and then now we're having a vacant property that's doesn't have that capability to assist the fire department in that temporary time between them getting there, such as maybe like the hotel on Wanamaker that I think caught fire a couple weeks ago. Wild Horse is talking about shutting down. You're going to have some vacant buildings where the property owner might look at it and say, hey, I'm just going to yank this meter out instead of paying this fee every month. I think maybe we should, if they have an active fire system, we should maybe not allow that, just for the simple fact of we're maybe creating a hazard in that aspect.
I can speak to that. Fire lines is what feeds those fire suppression systems. They are completely different than the domestic water meter.
Okay.
They are always active. They are not allowed to be removed or
I
terminated.
wasn't sure. I just want to make sure, because that was my first thought, was it was going to, put our firefighters at harm and our neighborhoods at harm, kind of thing. So, but thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councilman. Just a comment, I think this readiness to serve, if a house is vacant with the water shut off, whatever, they're still paying property taxes, hopefully. So the funding, the revenue that the city needs to maintain streets and those type of things is there. And so this is really analogous to that. We're talking about a fee that means, the city can maintain, as was mentioned earlier, fire hydrants, maintain the meters. So when they do start using water again, it's available. Makes total sense to me. And I appreciate this hadn't been discussed before. I think, I don't know who came up with this idea, but it makes a lot of sense. You say you've looked at all the communities around here, almost all of them do that in one form or the other. Is that correct, Mr. City Manager?
We have several that specifically call out readiness to serve, and those that don't, you see that built into base rates.
Okay.
If we don't do a readiness to serve charge, we would be looking to raise rates in other areas.
Very good. All right. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you for your, Councilwoman Ortiz.
Steve, what areas would that be? You said if we don't do the readiness to serve, we'd have to take it in what you just said, we'd have to take it out in other areas. What areas would that be?
We're basically looking at about $700,000 on the water side and about $300,000 on the wastewater side. Those would go into residential base rates. So your base rates would go up.
But didn't I hear you say earlier that we need to bring this up to code and do that? That's why we're doing it?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually code says we're supposed to be doing this, and so we're actually following code.
So if we don't do it, I mean, you're saying we have to do it now, right? So to say that our base rates would go up if we don't do it, but we have to do it, right?
We have to do it, or you have to change municipal code.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense to me. Okay. Another thing I had, me and you talked about the pilot, and I know you came back with an explanation, and it kind of went by me real fast. But what me and you talked about is correct, right? You just told Neil we didn't have enough money to do it because it wouldn't put a dent in our debt service. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. So what we're doing here is we're making sure that our ratepayers don't have to pay for Polk Quincy on the water side. So that's how we've tried to come back and keep rates lower. Is the utility fund won't be paying for that highway.
Okay, I think I got it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You're doing a great job. Just keep your mic on.
You know, that's what I wanted to hear. All right, item 6, clerk will read.
Public comment, and it looks like we have 3 individuals signed up.
We do have 3 people signed up. At this time, I'll call Winston Brown to the podium. Winston Brown. Not online. All right. Angela Box. Angela. 0 for 2 so far. And finally, Chris Dietster? Deitster? Yes, sir. Mr. Deitster, please approach the podium. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you very much. I want to greet you all tonight, and sorry for my appearance. This was a work day rather than a dentistry day for me. I'm Dr. Chris Deister. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and practitioner of dentistry here in Topeka from 1979, till in 97 when I moved to Ohio. Stayed there for 20 years for my basketball playing collegiates. And after they played professionally, I came home to Topeka, Kansas, the city I love, after retiring in 2018 for a not-for-profit that I served in Greenville, Ohio. So I come back as an up-Topeka guy and a lover of this city. And one thing I just want to note is congratulations on the way we're now making efforts at repairing our streets and byways here. But we've got a long recovery because of this particular thing. And I mentioned it a year and a half ago at City Council, and I want to remind you and our new city manager that this is very important. And I'm what's called and came back and was on dynamic core meetings and down at Topeka Inc. And we met in the top of U.S. Bank building and all that. And I had my little card out there, community volunteer. That's who I am. I'm not a money guy, but I'm a people gatherer and an idea man. And I would have been in architecture school if I hadn't done dentistry. But it came to my attention when I came back to Topeka that the roads were still much the same. And I wondered what was going on. And I wondered why the flats of our cement work look so nice and the saw lines are completely and disastrously degenerated. So I called our city manager at the time, and that was the man before our interim city manager, and his name was what? Mr. Trout. Wonderful guy. And I finally got him on the phone because, he's a busy man. And so we talked a while, and he said, well, Chris, I'll go back and take a look and see what happened there. Because this is very odd for vehicular surface to degenerate the way we have. He came back to me and said, that's a month later. He came back on the phone very politely, said, I've looked at it, and we actually received the wrong Portland.
the wrong grade. Now, what that tells me is some breakdown somewhere in purchasing, which can be normal. It can be a normal mistake. Unfortunately, that's about a $100 million mistake because all these surfaces all over Topeka look the same. I've worked in cement. This first job I had with Dunn Construction in Kansas City on bridges. And they were very specific. I mean, there was is that 4 minutes? Okay. So anyway, in that regard, I just want to say, what I wanted to ask him next was, did we ever go back to that company and say, or go back to the city manager and say, how did this happen? Did we hire a company just because we got a low bid? But I feel like, with increasing respect for you, from what I've heard, and I really do, I'm glad you're in position. I want to be confident as a taxpayer and kind of representing community volunteers, because I don't know how many of them are here, but I've been speaking for us from 2018 through Momentum 2022, and now trying to have a voice at the riverfront, which I haven't been able to be yet, but they know where I am on it. But I just was so discouraged that now we've got to come back from those,
Sir, that's the end of your time. Do you need a...
Can I ask for another minute or two? Or
Is
what
there a
do you
motion?
Move to approve 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. 2 minutes, sir.
All right, I'll be quick then. I would like to get an answer for the citizens of Topeka. Did we ever go back on that company and try to see about fulfillment or regress or you know, do we, and is there still time, or we passed a what is it, Joe? Limitation statute? But the thing is, I don't know. But I want that for our citizens. And I want to know, Mr. City Manager, Steve, City Manager, yes. I want to be confident that we have a city manager now. And I know it was not that previous city manager's fault or anything else. I have no concern to blame anybody. But we can't make a mistake like that again. City Councilman Hiller has been so good to watch our funds, and I just want to encourage you. And I wanted to say something else, but I'll say that next time, and I thank you for your time.
Item 7 is announcements. City Clerk. City Manager.
Yes. Sorry, I do have one. What was my one? Could you come back around?
We can do that. Let's move to the governing body. You got it?
I have had people remind me of what I was supposed to tell you.
Oh, okay, great.
So
Wait, hold on a second.
Sorry
City
about that.
Manager?
Thank you. We are actually supposed to present the CIP to governing body by April 1 each year. Given the uncertainty on sales tax at the legislature, given our discussion on water rates, I feel it's best for us to delay that conversation into the third week of April so that we can have a more productive conversation. With thanks to my staff for reminding me.
Yeah. Is that just a procedural issue, or do we need to take action on anything? Very good. Very good. Councilwoman Nager.
Should it be the city clerk now?
I think it's you, and then we come back to the city clerk.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You've been doing a great job. So, well, I appreciate it too. All right. I got an email last week from a local company. MP Pyland Advertising is celebrating 25 years in the community coming up on April 1st. And in order to celebrate their 25th anniversary, they are raising awareness of period poverty and collecting period supplies for Topeka Public Schools USD 501. Period poverty oh my gosh, that's getting hard to say. Period poverty is when menstruators don't have the financial means to purchase what they need to manage their period. So what happens once a month is something that they cannot cover, that they cannot go ahead and provide for themselves. And that's something, especially in school, as people are starting in that portion of their lives and that biological process, you feel embarrassed by it. You already feel overwhelmed by it, and then all of a sudden you don't have the proper supplies. And so what this local company is doing is using their celebration to elevate this issue, to make it easier for people to talk about periods, and to make sure that these young people have the supplies that they need. So they are now entering phase 2, and they are raising money to go ahead and make sure that they have supplies within USD 501 so that people are prepared. Teachers have the supplies that they need for their students, and students can feel more secure with this very regular thing. So I don't know if it's going to be big enough, but it's mbpylon.com/25. Please go on there. You can find out more information, not only about period poverty, but their specific way that they are elevating this to a talking point and supporting our youth. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just two quick things. The first is our city attorney and I were joking earlier today was kind of Topeka Day at the legislature a little bit. Several of the bills that we made legislative priorities were having second hearings on the other side of the chamber, having passed one side. Two of them Topekans are very much going to care about, although they're on very opposite ends of the spectrum. One was our common consumption law, which passed the House resoundingly, had a hearing today in the Senate, and is likely to move forward, which would allow us to designate areas to walk around with your alcohol, like downtown in Nodo. So yay for everybody, that could be coming soon. The second is on a much more serious and actually has real-world implications issue, which was our desire to make sure, in the short version, the people who are on driving while suspended for reasons that often have to do with simple fines don't have to spend a mandatory 5 days in jail. And that bill has moved forward, and I want to commend Amanda and the staff and Whitney for the chair of the committee in the Senate had some very specific rules of who she wanted to testify, and we found those people and made sure they were there today testifying with the right credentials to push this thing forward. So good work on their part, and I think that bill is going to move forward, and it'll actually make a difference to not just Topekans, but actually people all across the state. So I just want to thank them for all their hard work on that. The second thing was we had a Policy and Finance Committee meeting today. We got an ARPA update. I think you'll get the form at some point. It'll either be in a packet or emailed to you. But just a quick update is almost half of the money has been distributed to this point. 44 of the 49 entities have received some of their payment to date. There are 5 entities out there that are still working on some technical glitches with the federal government. We're not concerned. It's the federal government, so they'll eventually get that worked out, get what we need from them, and get them their money. But it's moving right along, and almost half that money is now out in the community being put to good work. So that's very much a positive for Topeka. So thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you. I have a couple things, and I will start by putting on a little St. Patrick's Day bling. Give it a report and an announcement. The report is that after the mayor's bringing up the issue of the parade and an offer that anybody from the council could volunteer to carry our banner at the front of the parade, no one else volunteered, so I did. And I wanted to report that it was a lot of fun. It was, as usual, a good turnout in the parade, and despite the weather, a great and very appreciative turnout along the parade route. So I wanted to announce then that I'm sure that Liz is available, that applications are open right now to carry that banner, either 1 or 2 people, for next year's St. Patrick's Day parade. Then another quick report. Topeka's getting a little bit of visibility with Global Ties KC, thanks to some resulting action from Topeka United and Mosaic Partner Pairs. And I just thought I'd let you know we had a couple people that were invited and were there in Kansas City this past week for recognition of a woman from Afghanistan/Turkey who's being honored as one of the International Women of Courage internationally. And then just this afternoon, a couple of us met for the second year in a row with groups of young people, high school students from Chile and Argentina, in terms of learning about community building and so on. And it's fun, and it's great to see that kind of visibility and that kind of activity in Topeka as well. Related also, Topeka United, people are familiar with Mosaic Partner Pairs, is opening up a youth-only cohort this year. Applications for that should open tomorrow. And that's for the youth to meet just once a month from April to December, in both being paired with someone different from them as well as being in a small group. So if anybody knows anybody, they can watch for that opportunity to open up probably tomorrow. I mentioned last week that changing our cultural property maintenance is getting rolling. I have a little better prepared announcement for that today. Hopefully everybody on the council got the flyer in an email shortly after our meeting last week. It is now up on city social media as well. Just stay tuned. Councilwoman Valdivia and I will be on the red couch on Friday, and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala and Shamika Sims, the chair of the CAC, will be on the morning show on KSNT the morning of the 30th, 6:15. So get up, turn your TV on while you're getting started, and catch that. We're really excited to involve neighborhood folks in that publicity, and there will be some PSAs done as well that you could watch for and share. The substance of those meetings, which sound kind of plain, like public information meeting, oh yeah, I've heard of those, is really to engage people from the neighborhoods in ways to organize groups or their whole neighborhood to get mowing done this summer, particularly mowing. It can be more than that, but helping people to help themselves and their neighbors to get things done. Those sessions will also cover how volunteers can get engaged in this process this summer, whether they are from the neighborhood or whether it's organizations otherwise, how they can register, how they can get connected in ways to help. And also, thanks to staff group as well as volunteers such as Councilwoman Rustling Chains and the Greater Topeka Partnership as well, we are expecting to have a lawnmower to give away at each of those public information sessions, a lawnmower for neighborhood folks who attend, as well as a variety of other gardening and yard work related door prizes. Just a quick reminder then, the first session of that is Thursday evening, the 30th of March at Central Park Community Center. The next one is the following Monday, April the 3rd at Hillcrest at midday at 11:30. And then one in Spanish on April the 10th at the Salvation Army in the evening at 5:30. So please pass the word. The idea is to begin changing that culture here in Topeka of people taking care of their own yards and helping each other in the community so that Topeka looks good on our own. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just basically what she said, to reiterate Councilwoman Hiller's remarks, and we're going at it hot and heavy, so neighborhoods, again, we need you. Wanted to talk a little bit more about the unsheltered chronically mentally ill, the mentally ill wandering throughout District 2, etc. After ongoing conversations with folks not only in my district, but outside of District 2, and the stark realization that we are in a crisis moment here in Topeka, my thoughts keep moving towards what we really should be seeking, in addition to whatever good intentions the city manager has with getting the consultant and having people meet to be better leaders and all of this stuff. We need an emergency shelter to get people out of the encampments, which I do believe specifically along the river, they are increasing. I do say I have some concern, even though it's wonderful news to know that there's empty encampments in other parts of the city that have now been cleaned up. I wonder where those people are going, or if anybody has any idea where they went. My concern and the concern of folks in District 2 is that they're going to end up camping along the river, thus increasing the degradation of trash and human waste, et cetera, into the river. I don't know that for sure. That's what the concerns are. So that there is need for an emergency shelter to get people out of the encampments, to get them the services they need, and to clean up the city. And after talking to more and more people in mental health and the crisis that we are facing in mental health, not only with the unsheltered, not only with the homeless, but just basic lack of mental health services because there are not enough folks to help all those in need, I strongly believe that we need another mental health facility in this city because, folks, we are bleeding out. So I wanted to give a reminder to the Oakland folks that I have not had a chance to talk to yet. We just had our NIA meeting on Monday. It was very productive in talking about this. But I wanted to remind folks in Oakland that we are having the meeting at CRC Lundgren School on March 29th at 6 p.m., 1020 Northeast Forest Street. And that meeting will be about the mentally ill men, many unsheltered, roaming the streets of Oakland and parts of North Topeka. Closest to the Kansas Avenue Bridge is in North Topeka, where much of this activity takes place. Talking about the chronic unsheltered, the encampments and such that are increasing not only across Topeka, but specifically in District 2. Also to let my district know that I was invited this coming Thursday to the Kansas State House to have a roundtable discussion on Thursday afternoon with I'm not sure who all concerning the chronic unsheltered. I know that House Bill 2434, I don't think it's come out of committee yet. I don't know if it is. I don't know where it is. But I was asked to be part of this roundtable discussion. And I'm going to be very frank in that discussion. Also, and this is just to let people know how much time this unsheltered issue takes up in some areas of town. Friday, I'll be meeting with staff, with some city staff and a social service agency in North Topeka, again, that have growing concerns of fires because of a very difficult situation that has arisen in this area of North Topeka that I'm not going to get into right now, but how people that are unsheltered are living currently. And lastly, the city manager, you and I engaged in an quick email last night when you told me there was 200 beds are needed to ban camping, right? That's what you had sent me?
Roughly.
And I did not ask you, because part of the conversation had been about thinking about having this emergency shelter. I have been told that the Topeka Rescue Mission's Children's Palace was empty. And so as Oaklanders and myself and North Topekans and I were talking, the idea was, well, why not use the Children's Palace? Make it low barrier instead of high barrier. Have some city money. We have, go into it, lease it. Maybe Barry can lease it or Amanda Broyles can lease it to the city or donate it to the city. Have this as an emergency shelter to get the folks off the streets. We have over 60 agencies, you've said, city manager, that touch or intersect with the unsheltered in some capacity. Surely those agencies can partner to provide services to the folks if we get them here and we get them off the river and going up and down the streets. But you told me that that was not possible. You said 200 beds were needed to ban camping, and the Children's Palace is not currently configured for a large population, nor is it low barrier. So I guess my question would be, and you can follow up in an email or whatever, but I'll bring it up next week, is that has that offer ever been posed to the rescue mission about using what I've been told is an empty location? It has been? So any kind of update that we can be given on why or why not it cannot be used at a later time if you need to research it, I understand. But I am just saying, people were telling me on the Facebook page, on Oakland Facebook page, we're coming up with all of these empty buildings that we have in the city. And why not put the unsheltered in there for an emergency, for emergency use until the city comes up with a better plan? And I'm all for that. So I'm all for suggestions. So that's all I wanted to bring forward right now. And I hope to see the city officials that were invited to the March 29th meeting, along with the district attorney and Shawnee County Representative Kevin Cook, at the meeting to listen to the people of Oakland and North Topeka. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz? No comments. Councilman Emerson?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I actually have a few things this evening. First, kind of in reference to, sorry, I couldn't think of your last name, Duncan, Councilmember Duncan. I was thinking, I say Spencer, I don't like to use first names, but to what Councilman Duncan said earlier, I just wanted to thank both you and Ms. Stanley for the job you've done at advocating on behalf of the Topeka this year. You guys have done a fantastic job for us, so I really appreciate it. I know you're doing it kind of on behalf of the League of the Justice League, I call it, the Kansas League of Municipalities, but we kind of get a 2-for-1 there, so I really appreciate everything you do. And to answer Dr. Deester's, part of Dr. Deester's question, and it's a great question about the joints. So there was a period of time when the new quarry opened out on 45th Street. The rock that we were getting from them was porous, more porous than the old rock. And unfortunately, that led to a freeze-thaw problem, which led to early deterioration of the joints. And I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago now, the city realized that. And by the way, KDOT did as well. If you look at 470 around the southwest side of town, had the same issues with the joint deterioration. So what the city's done since, they've went what's called a durable aggregate mix. It uses granite basically in lieu of limestone. And that is, in other parts of the country, that is shown to be very effective. But it's a great question, and yes, it stinks that 6th Street, 21st Street, Adams Street, from 37th to from 29th to 37th, all these huge street projects are done with that poor aggregate there. It was about a period of about 8 years. To answer your question about going back, that was owned by Martin Marietta at the time. They no longer are in business here. And even so, I think the statute's only like a year or two, 2 years on construction defects. So sometimes I might rely on that. But anyway, but it's a great question. I hope you're welcome. Thanks for bringing it up. Secondly, last Thursday was the long-delayed official grand opening of Milk and Honey Coffee Shop there at 29th and Powell, just north of the West Lake over there. I don't know if anyone else, West Siders and stuff have been out there, but if you haven't, it's a fantastic place to come over and get a coffee, great food, and it's really cheap. I mean, honestly, I think they should raise the prices. Anyway. But Chris and Darlene started that, both local people. They started that during the darkest days of COVID. And since then, it's been a spectacular success, and it's been a great victory for Southeast Topeka. Yeah, come back. Sorry.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kell.
All right. Tonight is the championship game of the World Baseball Classic. It's an Olympic-style tournament, or the best players in the world play each other, and this is the only way that the MLB players ever got to play in this tournament, because, as most of us know, pro athletes were banned from the Olympics for several years. And their motto is "Baseball is spoken here." And it doesn't matter political views, nationality, background, religion, socioeconomic status, etc. This is a great event that brings people together, and no matter their differences, they all come together. I was fortunate enough to go to the first one in 2006, and to see people that would almost want to fist fight each other. Yankees, Red Sox fans, Royals, Cardinals, Dodgers, Padres, kind of things like that. But then you get these different countries where they're at war with each other on their borders. But when it comes to this, they come together and their fans are amazing to watch. And every year it's gotten better and better to watch this. And then every year I've sat here and thought, why can't we as people just take this little snippet and look at things and find that commonality amongst each other. We won't get along on everything, but it doesn't mean we can't get along on most things. Get to know your neighbors, and as Jackie Moon once said, everybody love everybody.
Very good. All right. We've got a few more things to do tonight. I'll get to the city clerk in a minute. I've got a couple of announcements, and then it looks like we need to suspend the rules and go back and vote on the CIP. So the mayor left a couple of notes for me, and I'm going to try to get through these 15, 20 minutes. I'm sure I can do it. He wanted to note the NAMI Walk, which is March 25th at Family Sports Center, 11 to 1 p.m. For those of you that aren't familiar with NAMI, it's a great organization. We talked a little bit earlier about mental health crisis. NAMI is an organization that has dealt with that effectively, particularly for families with children for a number of years. He also wanted to point out the Fellowship Highcrest Scholarship. I'm not sure I can do justice to all of this, but Fellowship Highcrest has a college and career scholarship fund. They will be awarding 2 scholarships for 2023 for an estimated $400 each. These are for students entering their sophomore year of high school through their freshman year of college or first year of trade school in the fall of 2023. And the key date there is April 30th, 2023. Again, that's Fellowship Highcrest, and there's a link to the application on their site at fellowshiphighcrest.com. So please take advantage of that if you need to. There was a homeowners association meeting, unfortunately in District 7. There's the neighborhood meetings tend to be homeowners associations. But it's a great time to get together with folks in the district. We did that Sunday night. It was the annual meeting of the Summerfield Homeowners Association. They'd asked me to come and present on street repairs in their neighborhood, as well as the Elevation Parkway project. I just wanted to highlight, I reached out to Braxton Copley and asked him to help me with that presentation. Well, let's be fair. I asked him to make the presentation. And which he did very well, but he also brought a number of city staff as well as consultants that are working on the street repair projects. They gave a great presentation, answered a lot of questions, and I think it was appreciated. I heard several comments about they didn't expect that kind of participation. So it just points out that we have a highly functioning staff that really goes above and beyond. So I like to think we under-promised and over-delivered. And as a politician, I'll take full credit for it. But I do want to thank Braxton, Steve, Rhiannon, everybody that was there. It's appreciated. And finally, I couldn't let the opportunity pass for my fellow KU folks. If anybody would have asked me in about August of last year which university from the state of Kansas would be going to the Sweet 16, I definitely would not have guessed K-State. But there you are. Life is fun.
Mic check, please. Mic check.
Congratulations to them, and I think it's really, I've heard a lot of my KU friends can't say enough good things about the coach at K-State. I think that's just an illustration of get the right person in a leadership position, and you can do amazing things. With that, I will first go back to the city clerk for her announcements. We do have a meeting next week, so she will read that.
So on March 28th, we have a special meeting work session, and it's for strategic planning, as the city manager had mentioned earlier. The first portion will just be groups that will not be advertised or televised, and then the last portion of the meeting will be televised, and it's will be advertised as a regular meeting. So it's on the city's website and will be posted on the web.
Thank you for that. City Attorney, you want to outline what we need to do now?
Sure. So while the requirement that the CIP be presented by April 1st is not in city code and resolution 8831, it does state that the city manager shall present the CIP to the governing body no later than April 1st. While sometimes in the law shall means shall, and while lots of times shall means may, generally this governing body means shall when they tell a city manager to do something. So it would be prudent to waive the rules, make a motion to allow the city manager a delayed date to present the CIP.
Okay, so is that two different actions? Waive
It
the
is.
rules and
The
add
first would be
an
a-
agenda item?
Waiver of the rules, which requires 7 votes, and then it would be adding the agenda item and voting on it.
All right, so we'll first ask for a motion to waive the rules. I have a motion and a second.
Who was Hiller? Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller, Councilman Kell motion, Councilman Hiller second. Any discussion? If not, City Clerk?
Councilmembers Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Very good. And then
the second motion would be to add an agenda item moving to allow the city manager a delayed date for the introduction of the CIP.
all right. Motion?
Move, yeah. Move to, what date would you need, city manager?
We anticipate April 18.
Okay. Move to add action item, is it on the 18th for the CIP?
Do you need 3 motions or 2?
I believe you could do this in one additional motion.
Could you give us the motion?
The motion would be, I move to add an agenda item authorizing the city manager to present the CIP no later than April 18th.
All right, we've got that motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilwoman Nager. Any discussion?
That's tax day, just going to point that out.
What an excellent day to talk about spending more money. Any discussion, Councilwoman Hiller?
My question sort of across the table was, if we're adding the item, then we're going to vote on the item. So there's really another step.
We're going to combine it all together.
I would combine it all
Boom.
together. I move to add and approve at this
There you
time.
go.
Okay.
We got it.
So amended.
Yep. All right. No further questions. City Clerk?
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dobler,
Yes.
Councilmembers Duncan,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Very good. I think we're through the agenda. I've got to say, this is a lot of work. I'm looking forward to going back over there behind the pillar next
Yeah,
week.
you did a subpar job.
Yeah. All right. With no further action to come before this body, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks for watching tonight's City Council meeting. A recording of the meeting will replay at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. All of our recorded council and committee meetings from this week will replay starting at 9 every Saturday and Sunday morning. You can find all of our video content on the City of Topeka's YouTube page.